What's up, Cobra Kai fans? Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be talking about the recently released third season of Cobra Kai. Spoiler and non-spoiler talk, though obviously we'll be talking about spoilers from season 1 and season 2. And you wouldn't have clicked on this video if you're not closely following the Cobra Kai series. And so by the end of second season, it all ends with a huge karate fight between these two gangs. We have Team Cobra Kai and Team Miyagi-Do, and by the end of it, we find our main characters in precarious situations. Miguel is in coma, Kreese has taken over Cobra Kai, which leaves Johnny Lawrence back to square one, and Daniel Larusso is trying to mitigate the impact of such huge catastrophe to his car dealership. This is gonna be a rough season for our characters. Before I introduce to you my guest for this episode, why don't you guys show your support to the channel by hitting that like button and subscribing to us for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games. Now, I bring back my friend from the Juice Talkies YouTube channel. We have here Sensei, Sensei Joshua Perez, complete with his headband.
Yeah, I came ready. I
Yeah.
got the headband. I got the black belt too. Got the black belt.
Looking good. Okay, so I know we're dying to talk about this, but you know, I just have to ask the important question. Are you Team Cobra Kai or Team Miyagi-Do? I'm talking about Cobra Kai led by Johnny Lawrence.
That's a tough choice.
I know, right?
Because Cobra Kai is so cool. They push the boundaries a little bit. They don't sugarcoat things. I'm gonna have to go Cobra Kai, but the newer version, the newer Johnny style.
Yeah, I was hoping that you're gonna go Cobra Kai so we can send a bit of rivalry in here. Obviously, I'm Team Miyagi-Do because I'm all about the Zen and defense. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to know your non-spoiler thoughts for season 3. So go, fire away.
Before last week, I hadn't seen a single episode of Cobra Kai. I had mixed feelings about it because I kept saying to myself, how is this show going to be successful without Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi? Because he was the heart and soul of the original films. That meant a lot to the film's narrative and to the fans of the franchise. And I wasn't completely blown away from the initial trailer when they first introduced this. You had season 1, which reintroduced that 30-something-year-old rivalry between Johnny and Daniel. I never would have thought this all this time later that we'd get a different perspective from Johnny's point of view. That's something big with this series because it honestly shifts who the underdog truly is in my opinion.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's not Daniel, you know, he isn't the saint that we were accustomed to believing in. I think that's what's really big for this series.
What really attracted me is the change in the perspective in the storytelling, how this seemingly one-note villain is fleshed out and given his, you know, story arc on the same level with Daniel LaRusso. So it's fun that we're not being given this goody-goody character. We also have this anti-hero that you can call, and getting immersed with these two character journeys and seeing these two philosophies of Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai, because this series always has been, specifically this third season, is showing the impact of the mentors in the lives of their students, from the values and the teaching styles. This season has given Kreese the backstory that he needs, because by second season, I was kind of annoyed with his character. Like, I was asking myself, what is this character doing? Is he going to be just there? Like, I don't get his end game. Then by the end of the second season, oh, that's what he wants to do. He wants to take over Cobra Kai because he thinks Johnny Lawrence has gone soft. And what's wonderful, I think, this backstory is not done to give an excuse to the actions of the character, to the behavior of the character. It's just given there to put depth behind his actions. Usually when you show vulnerability to a villain, the villain kind of goes soft. And I love that actor Martin Kove here has retained his menacing presence. And yeah, I think it will be a betrayal to the character if they suddenly make him look weaker. So I like that. That is one of the highlights. One can even argue that this is a season. And maybe, I guess, when it comes to the cheesiness and all of it, I know because I try to get my sister watch this show, and while watching some of the episodes with me, she finds it a bit cheesy. And I guess that those are one of the things that you have to embrace right from the get-go, you know, because Cobra Kai has started from these two teams who can't let go of the past, and now they have transcended to a new generation. They have all these coming of age stories shaped on the context of this petty rivalry. So this is one of the shows that shouldn't have really worked. The concept is really ridiculous. It seems like one of those things that Hollywood is just so obsessed to reboot, but you know, this is one of the shows right now that I can't let go because I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, I agree. As far as the cheesiness, and actually this is a true story, my brother actually wrapped up season 3 earlier, and he sends me a text message and he can't get over the cheesiness and how bad it is. But honestly, I think that the cheesiness is intentional. I think it works in the favor of Cobra Kai because being a long-term fan of the original films, there's something about this series that captures that 80s action martial arts feel. If you were watching those films back then, and or you know, martial art films in general in the 80s, they were cheesy. They were over the top, they were laughable. It wouldn't quite fit into today's standards, but they do it in a way that just makes it self-aware. I think it gives you that feel that you are watching an 80s action flick. The whole love triangles thing or the wrap-up of season 2 with that all-out brawl in the high school, it's super over the top. It's like that would never happen in a real situation, but I think it's done to like this really perfect balance. Like it's meant to be fun and just goofy. I don't think it has to be too serious, but I think the cheesiness is one of the things I love most about this series.
Yeah, I think the key word that I'm looking for what you said is self-aware, and I think it's very optimal that the showrunners here, I have to give them a shout out because they've done such great work in writing these characters. Josh Hill, John Hurwitz, and Hayden Schlossberg. I've always seen Cobra Kai as part an 80s nostalgia, then part martial arts epic, then teenage coming of age story, and you know, to putting all these elements together and you know, making it something more modern and relevant. It did work, and third season they've expanded the story. I'm glad that I've seen Karate Kid movies because we've seen characters from the Karate Kid Part 2 make an appearance here, and the martial arts choreo, I like that they are realistic, but at the same time they're still nifty, and you won't really compare it to say John Wick movies because we're just talking about here kids and men who are already past their prime, but I really enjoyed it, the sequences that they do here, and there's levity that's maintained in Johnny Lawrence's character, but at the same time there's emotional stakes. You really care about these characters, and what I like about this third season more is the shifting allegiances become more prevalent.
I think this season pushes the envelope in terms of the action, also as far as the character development. More Easter eggs, more characters introduced that I think propel Daniel and Johnny forward. It's a great season, and I'm looking forward to seeing season 4. I'm gonna give Cobra Kai season 3 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, we actually have the same rating. I just love that this season has this transformation and redemption amongst these characters, and you know, there's also a good commentary here about karate. Is that the root of the violence, or is it depending on the mentors here who are imposing these values to their students? So yeah, I think it's time now to proceed to our spoiler talk. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. So we'll be talking about character arcs first. Let's talk about the original protagonist of the franchise. We have Daniel Larusso. I guess the highlight for this character is he gets to head back to Okinawa, Japan, and gets reunited with Kumiko and Chosen from the Karate Kid Part 2 movies to save his auto dealership and also to learn some new tricks here.
I think this was definitely a big turning point, and it was one of my favorite moments, that whole trip to Japan. It wasn't the longest trip, but the time that we did get with him in Okinawa, plenty of nice Easter eggs. Kumiko introducing her. Honestly, like when I first saw her, she didn't look like the original Kumiko, so you know, I thought maybe they recasted her. I had to go look on IMDb just to make sure, but sure enough, it was the original Kumiko, and it just put a smile on my face. And not only reintroducing her, the young girl that he saved from the second film.
Yeah.
That was bigger shocker. I'm like, wow, they are really pulling all the stops. And then also bringing back Chosen, I didn't even expect that either. But I feel like this whole entire trip to Japan, there is some foreshadowing, I think, going on there with what's going to happen in season 4. You know, he did learn a new technique from Chosen. I didn't think that he was going to use that technique so soon.
Yeah.
That's something that kind of took me off guard. So, you know, I said to myself, well, if that was his golden technique and he's already used it, it just would seem a little bit redundant to actually just recycle the same technique for season 4. Honestly, I think that the scroll that he actually goes away with, that Chosen actually gives him, holds a lot more secrets. And I think what we're going to see in season 4 is more of what those techniques hold in that scroll that will actually determine the outcome of that final tournament in season 4. So I'm super excited to see how that's going to play out.
Actually, I'm glad that Larusso was able to use that technique against Kreese by the end of the season, because everything just came full circle. Now we have a reason to justify the reintroduction of Chosen here. But, you know, I think this show has a lot of tricks to show in the further seasons, because this is the show that I have underestimated, and I know just third season just exceeded my expectations. I didn't really think that they can go beyond and expand the lore, you know, because I don't want characters reintroduced just for the sake of, hey, remember Kumiko and Chosen? No, they really play an
just
integral,
for fan service,
and play an integral part. And then that kid Yuna, who happens to be the vice president for sales of the Doyona, everything works out well. So by the end of it, I think Daniel Larusso and Johnny Lawrence have a mutual respect. I think it's on episode 2 that we find themselves again on this body cup situation where they have to work together. Let's proceed now to the other protagonist here. We have Johnny Lawrence. At the end of third season, he has founded Eagle Fang Karate and merged with Daniel Larusso, though I'm not sure how that's gonna work. And we also have a walk down the memory lane with Ali, returning Elizabeth Shue, and a straining relationship with his biological son Robby, and then more fun dynamic with Miguel as he's
there's a lot. There's definitely a lot going on. How do you feel about Ali's return, though?
Actually, I loved her return here because her 2-episode guest stint seems to be definitive, and it's all about giving a closure, because we have these two guys, as I've said, who are still hung up on the past. I like that the show didn't force a love triangle again with John Lawrence and Carmen and Ali. So like, is Johnny Lawrence gonna fall back again to his playboy attitude? But no, I like that at the end there's a bit of a send-off. Ali is the inspiration that this character needs to move forward, so I like that. And honestly, I don't think she will be returning. I don't see any other plans. Like, it would be a stretch if she suddenly, like, say, opens up a new dojo by season 4. Honestly, I think that's it for her character.
I completely agree. I don't think there's anything else for her to do. When they said that she was coming back, I thought it was just going to be at a fan service type of level, but actually they played it really smart how they wrote her character into this, because she was the key to actually getting Daniel and Johnny to end their rivalry, to set aside their differences and to say, hey, you guys are basically looking into a mirror, that, you know, Daniel sees many parts of himself in Johnny and vice versa. And I think she was crucially needed for them to kind of realize that, because even though we do kind of see them making amends and working together, there's still a little bit of that friction between them two. I think that she was the chosen one to actually get them to say, hey, you know what? It's time to work together. Even if she doesn't come back for another episode, I'm completely fine with that. Like, I think she did one of the greatest things she could do for this series as far as character development for these two. And now you have Johnny and Daniel working together. It gave me chills, because we're gonna see something just we never thought we'd see in the older films, both of them working under one dojo. And like what you mentioned earlier, and I kept thinking to myself, well, what are they gonna call it now? Like, you know, Eagle, Tiger, Miyagi, Do. It's gonna be crazy what they come up with, but it's great. I think the whole Ali thing just really did some really good for this series.
Yeah, but just for the record, Eagle Fang Karate is so bad of a name that I want them to retain that name. And have you seen that logo, that eagle with actual fangs that looks ridiculous?
Yeah, it has the fangs, yeah.
Yeah, okay, So let's talk about the villain. In third season, we get a huge backstory. We finally know what makes Kreese tick in his backstory in Vietnam. And then by the end of third season, he's trying to call, I think that's the character of Terry Silver from Karate Kid Part 3, though I haven't seen that. I did some research. So yeah, this season, Kreese has been so manipulative with all those gaslighting.
It's kind of a love-hate thing, the flashbacks with him. I kind of felt like they were setting up possible redemption arc. I don't want to get to a point where it's kind of like the Oprah Winfrey show where it's kind of like, you get a redemption card, you get a redemption card, you get a redemption card. Because that's the reoccurring theme in this series is redemption, righting the wrongs of the past. But I kind of got that feeling from those flashbacks because you get the motivation, you get where he's coming from, the origin of Cobra Kai, how that all started, like his shift in personality and his morality. It was definitely very interesting. There's also a couple other scenes with him where he's doing something good, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, I would prefer they just keep him the villain. Maybe they just kind of redeem him later on and at the end of the series finale or something like that. Those flashbacks really put a new take to who he is because we never knew who he was back in the original films. He was just that fill-in, no backstory. I like that they're just kind of fleshing that out.
I think though Kreese is all about winning. He has been explicit about that, and I'm thinking that he don't really care about his students. He tried to get close with Tory, helping her, but it's all done in service of Cobra Kai. Though I have to mention something that I can't let it pass is Kreese actually tried to kill Johnny Lawrence, right? So the big question for me is Kreese redeemable in your eyes? Because he's like the Darth Vader of this Cobra Kai series. What do you think about that?
And this was something I actually thought of too, like that very first flashback that we got with that girl in the diner. If they even introduced her again, maybe then he'd be redeemable, that she didn't really die, because as his captain told him in that flashback that she had passed away, they kept that from him, and that's kind of what set him on his course. I mean, nothing's outside the realm of possibility, but I don't see anything that just indicates any kind of heart from him, any kind of compassion, which is something that most of the other casts of characters are showing us. Like, they're very deserving of second chances, but I feel like Kreese has yet to show that. And it's interesting that you mentioned the whole Darth Vader thing, because I was actually going to attach that analogy with another character. Yeah, and that's with Robby. Like, I feel like with the whole allegiances and changing and swapping, they're setting him up for the path of Anakin Skywalker, that prodigy student, that hope for the future. That's what Robby was, but now it's just kind of like Darth Vader. Like, he's kind of on that path. I feel like for sure he's gonna be redeemed at the end, but not before he goes through much more hardships, especially when Terry Silver is introduced.
That's why I got the chills when those three senseis stood against each other with their prodigies. Like, that moment hit me. This is like Palpatine Anakin moment here, and I'm really loving it. I think out of all the characters, he has the roughest arc here because he's just mad at everyone here. Robby is just a misguided teenager. Like, right now my impression about him is he's going to latch on to whoever figure that he's going to see. Like, I was even disappointed at him for seeing him hanging out with the Cobra Kai kids, stealing this snake from the zoo.
Oh yeah.
So I think this kid really needs guidance, and I'm not gonna fault the writers that they didn't give him a redemption for season 3, because I think they're smartly positioning these characters like chess pieces to give a more compelling season 4. Kreese for me is already irredeemable, though I can't really see if it's an option for the series to give a character death. Do you think they would go as far as that? Because at some point this villain arc should come to an end, right? And I've heard from an interview that Ralph Macchio and the executive producer are planning as far as season 6, and honestly I think it would have been dragging if Kreese remains to be the villain in the end. Season 4 might be his end, so if we're going to speculations here, but I have no idea of the dynamic of him and Terry Silver's character because I have yet to see Karate Kid Part 3. So are they a menacing duo?
I tend to forget about that third film because I feel like it was the one film that betrayed the character of Daniel and everything that he stood for. It's a movie that just did a complete 360, but Terry Silver showed up in the third movie. He was more hardcore. Like, he actually pushed Daniel because Daniel ended up joining Cobra Kai, and we actually learned that this season because he mentions it. He's talking to Johnny's former students, I believe, telling them that I was part of Cobra Kai once. I know what it's like.
Oh.
Yeah. I know what they
Oh,
do.
I actually caught that.
I picked that up right away, and that is, you know, referring back to that third film when he was actually under Terry Silver's instruction, and he intentionally was pushing Daniel because this was kind of like a revenge thing after they lost the first tournament, and he was basically poisoning Daniel's mind, and he was way more hardcore. I think that Terry Silver is going to be the ultimate villain in season 4, especially when he's paired up with Kreese. That's why I'm super excited to see like how that's all going to play out.
Wow. Actually, that got me interested because I want to see more layers from Daniel. I want to see his evil side. Maybe Terry Silver's character can get into his mind. Let's talk about the rival of Robby here, Miguel here, as a really great recovery arc. The show once again focuses on what it gives best, the Miguel and Johnny Lawrence dynamic.
His recovery, his time with Gianni. That's one of the things I love about Gianni that I find it's hilarious is that he's so disconnected from technology and social media, and just seeing those moments, it just puts a smile on my face. That's why Gianni happens to be my favorite character, is because he just gives us those moments of humor and comedy. I don't know if there's an actual legitimate answer why he doesn't understand how to plug a laptop into the wall. Like, he should be able to do these things, but I don't even care. Like, when I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, it's hilarious. And then he has these moments, you get to see Johnny's sensitive side through the small cracks, just enough to know that he cares, but then he kind of retreats back into jerk mode, and you know, with these machismo one-liners, kind of like in the scene where he's trying to apologize to his Cobra Kai students, trying to be open to him, and then when he turns away and he's walking back, he kind of slaps the books out of the students' hands, and he's kind of like, oh, sorry, old habits. And but it's moments like that I love from that character. He's sensitive just enough. He cares, but at the same time, his skin is tough, you know, and that's what makes him a really interesting character, especially when he's paired with Miguel, because, you know, Miguel has such a big heart, and he was his prize pupil at the beginning of this whole entire series. I think their chemistry is really great. Johnny's helping Miguel, and Miguel's helping Johnny at life, and just kind of understanding how things work with technology, you know?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Miguel is the thing that will complement Johnny Lawrence's redemption arc, and I think Johnny is like the type of person who's just resistant to change. It's nice that both of them are learning from each other. Now let's move forward to Samantha here. Samantha here has a wonderful arc. She's physically and emotionally scarred by Tory. We got some sort of a PTSD, and you know, I love that the show took a break from its love triangle, though it was able to bring back on this third season. But I think they're back. Miguel and Samantha are back.
I'm not a big fan of love triangles and the whole ping-ponging back and forth between relationships, because I don't want that to be the central focal point. I don't think they abuse it too much in this series, but I think we've seen enough back and forth. I think if Samantha is going to ultimately end up with Miguel, we should stay that course and just kind of see how that character growth goes from there. She had a couple episodes, traumatic episodes from that whole entire incident with Miguel falling, and it's nice to see her finally overcoming her fears. But I did feel like they kind of overdid it in a way, you know, like her just kind of being afraid of touching rails, and every time she saw it, like, she flinched. But I mean, it's part of the cheesiness, I guess, and you know, just kind of have to accept it for how it is. But I think that she's moving forward. You know, she's taking all of her father's lessons in. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually saw the final showdown be maybe Tory and Samantha. Like, that would not surprise me at all.
Tory here gets properly fleshed in season 3, though I would still categorize her as a villain. We feel bad about her because she's trying to support her family. She got expelled. She's juggling these multiple jobs. Then she has this predator of a landlord, and I love the line here that Samantha said, everyone has a sob story, but you don't get to be a bully. So I love that it's directed against Tory and Kreese of this world. But Sam's arc, actually, I was doubtful at first why is she having this PTSD issues, because she eventually won the battle against Tory last season, but I guess it all boils down that Sam wants to win the fight, but Tory changed her gears and suddenly went for a kill mode. So that will really scar you for life. Let's go to another rivalry, Hawk and Demetri. Demetri here has proven himself to be improving at karate. He even wins the heart of Yasmin. So this is a great season for him. And then Hawk did a complete 360 at the final episode.
The 360 with Hawk, I kind of saw that coming. There have been a couple episodes where he was in Cobra Kai when they were bringing his former bullies in to train. He was already confronting Kreese about that and his doubt that, you know, they didn't need any more fighters, that what they had was enough. But we all know that the real reason why he didn't want those newcomers was because those were his former bullies. From when that started, I kind of knew that he was kind of debating if he was even on the right side. So it was kind of sudden, but at the same time, I saw it coming. It kind of gave me goosebumps, like that moment when they're all fighting in Larusso's house and he makes that quick decision. I loved every moment of it. So I'm kind of glad that he switched sides, because he was kind of one of my favorite characters, because he was the most bullied, I believe, and he was the one that actually came back hitting harder. He was the one that kind of overcome his fears and self-doubt and self-consciousness, and we saw him, I think, transform the most out of every character. So it's really cool to see him redeemed, because he's such a badass character, you know, and I didn't want him to go down that route. We need that character on the good side.
I have to agree, Hawk is one of the better written characters of this show. I also cheered for him when he turned his back from his former Cobra Kai members. I am doubtful though that Demetri was quick to accept, because there's a big moment here that happened before that huge one-shot fight. Is Hawk broke Demetri's arm, and for any other season they would have played that more dramatically. If it was my case, I wouldn't be too eager to accept Hawk. He needs to give a formal apology, but I guess during that spur of the moment, he needs all the help that he can get. So maybe we can explore more of their relationship. Like, it would be awkward to see them season 4 like buddies again, that they need to talk about that elephant in the room that happened. But I
100% agree, because you know, just like you said, I think it's the heat of the moment that Demetri was kind of like, okay, let's do this, we're gonna work together. But I hope they do give that a little bit more time to marinate. I don't want to see him so forgiving so suddenly. Luckily for that fight sequence, it was just the heat of the moment kind of thing, where he's like, okay, we got to do this, and then we'll talk later. We'll figure this other stuff out later. Yeah,
it actually worked. Hawk suddenly realizing who's the real enemy here, because Kreese has been saying the enemy of the enemy is my friend, and you know, when it comes to being enemies, it has always been relative when it comes to show. And you know, one thing that I can get though, because with all this shifting allegiances, because we have some of the background characters here, of course we're not going to explore them, but it's just so easy for them to turn against their brothers. So
we see a lot of
like
that.
especially for Hawk. Like, I can't keep track. Oh, okay, so this is Team Cobra Kai. Then suddenly, okay, so you're beating up your friends who you were helping to beat other people just a while ago. So I might have to give a pass on that. You know, it's one of those things, and also how none of them calls the police, and how the parents are just so lax. So you might have to overlook that fact to enjoy this season.
It's like the end of season 2. I'm like, how do you have a massive all-out brawl, every student out of their classroom? This would never exist in the real world. Where did the teachers go? Like, I'm thinking that maybe they jumped out the window and they were like, screw this isn't worth it. You kind of have to suspend your belief a little bit for that 80s cheese, and I think that's just kind of part of the intentional point of the show.
Cobra Kai is one of the best conceived ideas of TV in this generation, where there's so much nostalgia that's being needed every now and then. And I kept comparing this show to Star Wars.
I agree 100%. I think this season is by far my favorite. I think it definitely sets the bar. I love the reoccurring themes of redemption and forgiveness, you know, because this season hits a lot harder than it did the first 2 seasons as far as that theme is concerned. It's constantly reminding us that we can't let the mistakes of the past determine our future. Most of all, I love like the little Easter eggs to the the original films. Season 4 is going to be probably the most intense and extreme out of all the seasons, given from what I've seen from the Karate Kid 3.
And also given that they already have Netflix money, because season 3 was pitched to Netflix after they have shot it. So they have bigger budget to work here. Though I would like to see Aisha return because she was written out this season.
Oh, yeah.
The writers couldn't find an angle to weave her story. In terms of embracing the canon, I wouldn't go far as saying that maybe they would even include the next Karate Kid. Are you aware of that movie? Though I haven't seen that.
I've seen that one too, and I was just going to say the same thing too. Yeah. So in the next Karate Kid, Pat Morita does come back for that film, and then it's Hilary Swank as the new student. It's very possible that they'll bring her back into this next season, especially if things get more intense from Cobra Kai, and then if they're bringing in Terry Silver, they're gonna need a lot of help. And I think if they bring her back in, it's gonna give them a boost. You know, Hilary Swank bringing that star power in, it's gonna be awesome. I think it's gonna be really cool to see her come back.
This show pays homage and respect to the original film, so as long as they have content, they really need to utilize that if they're going to expand the universe of Cobra Kai.
I agree. If they continue with the terrific writing and dialogue, with the flashbacks, they don't use them as a crutch in this series. I like how they're implementing those. I like how they use that as a tool. They're always teaching us something. There's always a lesson that comes with each flashback. So if they keep that going, I think we're gonna have a very nice and successful season 4.
And that's it for our review of Cobra Kai season 3. Let us know what you think in the comment sections down below. If you enjoyed watching this video, hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly content. Joshua, thank you so much for guesting.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching. And remember, fear does not exist in this channel. Bye. See you.